Hello everybody in YouTube land. It's wonderful to be with you today. And today we have a very special guest. I'm so excited about sharing this video space with Astro Victor. Victor, it's wonderful to have you here on my channel.
Oh, it's nice to be here with you guys. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. And we should have done this a long time ago. I don't know what's taken us so long, but it's about time we did a video together, and I'm very excited about the topic we're going to be looking at today. Just for any of my viewers who aren't familiar with Victor's work, Victor and I worked together and met through the Astrology channel, and we actually met in Bulgaria in 2019, which was a wonderful conference with the Astrology conference. But Victor has 20 years experience in astrology, hundreds of clients, very satisfied clients, and has taught I've lost count of the amount of webinars and lectures you've given, Victor, but you're an exceptional teacher, as would be expected with Jupiter on the midheaven.
And 5 planets in Sagittarius also.
Indeed, indeed. Wonderful. I have to share with people, when we met in Bulgaria, the one thing I remember about you in Bulgaria is that whenever we would break away from the lectures for, say, lunch or whatever, you would always have a big crowd around you at lunch sharing, your information, everyone just hanging on your every word because your knowledge is just so brilliant. So that's how I remember you from Bulgaria. And so again, absolute privilege to have you sharing on the channel today.
Thank you. I do believe that once you start astrology, you can never stop. Exactly. So there is no day when I don't learn something new or I don't do research, So I do research about something every single day. It's, I look at politicians where their part of fortune is mostly falls and stuff like that. Thank God we've got all the programs nowadays. So, it does the work, and then you get a percentage out of it, and then you can make some conclusions. So we never stop learning about new things.
Exactly. And it's so, like you've just said, it's so much easier these days than it was even sort of 10, 20 years ago when you had to draw up all your charts yourself. Now it's the click of a button, and that just gives so much more scope for exploring patterns in astrology. It's so much easier now to do that. It's great.
And actually, I'm very glad you mentioned the word pattern, because plenty of people are very afraid of studying astrology, but it's all about spotting patterns.
Yes.
So I always recommend my students to have an astrological diary, for instance, or journal, and then making sure that spotting patterns happen. So if I had a Sun and Mars conjunction 10 years ago, how did that play out, and how does it play out in my life now? Because all the planets are an evolutionary journey for us, meaning that once we start integrating those into our lives, then we should be experiencing the higher manifestation of those planets. So for me, astrology is a guiding tool where, let's say I'm going to have a very strong Pluto-Mars progress declination activation going on from December till April. Instead of having an accident or dying of it, I try to honor the planetary energies by transforming my energy level and going to the gym, for instance, and so forth. So if we honor the planetary energies, we don't need to be scared of them. Eventually, they're going to be helpful.
Absolutely perfect. And something that we should remember as we move into the topics we're going to discuss today, for sure. And your specialty, Victor, is Hellenistic astrology, isn't it? That's your meat and potatoes?
Well, I started with traditional, so I started with modern astrology, actually. So I took Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus as rulers of their sign. But then when I kind of felt a little bit of hunger to expand my knowledge, then I switched to whole sign house system, and I switched to Hellenistic as well, because it seemed to be working very fine for me. However, I'm not blindly focused just on traditional stuff. So I mix it with midpoints, I mix it with asteroids, because I think they might give you a deeper layer And my little problem with traditional astrology is sometimes that it's black and white.
Yeah.
So looking at the planet in detriment and fall and all my days, my life is doomed. And I don't necessarily agree with that. You know, so for instance, I usually say if there was no Mercury in Pisces element, there wouldn't be music industry, there wouldn't be psychic readers and so forth. So each position has got their positives and negatives. You know, it's like having Sun in Leo. Okay, it's just like reading the instructions on a tin. So the Sun is going to be a little bit more focused on those Leo energies. But, you know, it doesn't mean that it's not going to bring us some negative energies with it. You know, so yes, so I mix it with a little bit of a psychology, a little bit of a modern intake, but I use mainly traditional rulers.
Yeah. And as you've just said, we can up-level the energy, you know, instead of staying in that black and white stuckness, you know, we actually have a semblance of free will within that space too. So, yeah.
The only black and white astrology which I use is horary. So that's black and white. That's a yes or no, right? For instance, does Johnny love me? At the end of the day, it's a yes or no. But the natal chart exploration is more than that. There are hundreds of possible manifestation of that Saturn Sun square, for instance. So, and then if we lay down at least 10 of them to a client, then probably they can associate themselves with one of those. So, but a square is going to be at the end of the day kicking your butt to take action about something. So, you know, so it's not something which is negative. And also I like to mention to people that not every single square is a square. So meaning that I call them as fake squares, fake trines. Some of the trines are actually acting like squares. And how I determine that is from the essential dignity table.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. It's something I came up with, but it works very well. So it means that, for instance, let's say you have got a Saturn-Venus square, and if you go on your essential dignity table, and then Saturn likes Venus by triplicity, for instance, and Venus likes Saturn by face, then if two planets like each other, then why would it be a square? Because actually they are somehow motivating each other to take action. So actually I call it as a fake square, and then it tends to act sometimes like a trine. Yeah.
Looks
so
like is a conjunction, truly a conjunction, when it's visibly not together in the sky based on declination. There's so many variables, aren't there? And the more, as you said before, the more you learn about astrology, the more depth that you can plumb with what your interpretations are, for sure.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm just scratching my head when I have got clients coming and, oh, I was told by another astrologer I'm going to be having an accident next week. Is that true? And, you know, I just take a deep breath and, you know, it could be, yes, you might have an accident, but it could be talking about something else too. Exactly. Right? So why do we have to be always so negative about something? I'm not suggesting that we should lie to a client and not dragging their attention to possible, you know, negative things, because at the end of the day, we should, or we must. Yeah. But we also should offer a solution how to live up to those planetary energies in a positive way.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that approach, Victor, 100%. In fact, I was just having a discussion with my skeptic son about half an hour ago about these very issues. So, yes, thank you for aligning me back on the true path.
You know, just a very quick example. So, you know, I might tell you that you're going to get together with someone in 6 months' time. But if you lock yourself up in a dark room, the Prince Charming is not going to be knocking on your door, surely. Unless it's the postman and then you fall in love. But what are the chances of that, right? So planetary energies, no matter how positive or negative they are, we must take actions with them.
Yeah, absolutely. free will still is available to us. Yeah. So today we're going to be exploring a bit of mundane astrology. Now, mundane astrology is not my specialty. I do it for myself, for my own interest, but I don't do it professionally. And this is a very fascinating field, especially considering the state of the world at the moment. I remember having a chat with you recently about how people are often asking you to do mundane astrology. What's your perspective on how you practice with mundane astrology?
I don't like doing it much, to be frank, because my experience is that if they don't like what you have got to say, then people are going to attack you immediately. However, when I make a video about mundane astrology, my aim is actually to shed light on the positives and the negatives so that you can prepare yourself. So my intention is not to drag anyone down. It's more about preparing, for the upcoming energies. And hopefully I'm never right? So, and then if I have got something negative to say, then, hopefully I'm not right. So for instance, there is going to be this Neptune-Jupiter conjunction happening next year. And most of the astrologers are very optimistic about it. Well, no wonder why. Jupiter and Neptune at the end of the day. But unfortunately, even though with all the Sagittarius placements what I've got in my chart, and I'm a very optimistic person, but I'm not too optimistic about this Jupiter and Neptune conjunction at all.
Why is that? I've got to ask. I haven't researched.
One of the reasons I believe is because it's like blind sheep syndrome. So we follow something which is completely unclear, and we can't see things clearly, and we put our faith into something. Actually, I just made, I'm going to be posting my 2022 video in a couple of days' time, and there are too many 29-degree energy on the day of the conjunction. So there is going to be Australia on 29-degree, Ceres on 29-degree. So I think it's going to be a karmic year.
Very. Well, I know that there was a conjunction of Jupiter and Neptune. I think it was in
1856, the very last Jupiter and Neptune conjunction in Pisces.
Oh, in Pisces. Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure of the sign conjunction, but it was the year when they discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls and another ancient document, which to me is very Jupiter Pisces. These are really old religious documents that have had a bit of an impact on our philosophies and our religious beliefs since they were discovered. So to me, that was a good signature of the conjunction, but as you say, not in the sign of Pisces. So I would guess big floods should we be getting ready for?
Yeah, probably plenty of rain. Don't get me wrong, there's going to be positive side. I think there is going to be plenty of discovery around spirituality, probably plenty of new artistic talents will be coming around, so the film industry and stuff like that. But one of the most interesting things which I've spotted about this Neptune Jupiter conjunction is going to be happening on 23 degree. At the very same day, North Node and South Node will be on 23 degree as well.
Right.
So this 23 degree is going to be screaming. And obviously, Taurus and Scorpio are economic signs. So I'm expecting some sex industry, economic situations with this Neptune-Jupiter conjunction, some economic secrets to be revealed, maybe even something to do with, and not to mention that at the very close by, Uranus and North Node will be conjuncting as well, just 6 months later. And the last time when Uranus and North Node were conjuncting was in 1940.
Wow. In Taurus, you mean?
In Taurus, yes. So I think fighting for food, fighting for money is going to be a topic with this Neptune Jupiter conjunction. So I don't think it's just plenty of positives around it.
Interesting. I've heard a number of people forecasting food issues, and that's something before we went into the recording mode here, we were chatting about that. Maybe Should we open up the chart of what we're going to be looking at?
That's true. So we're going to be looking at the full moon, actually.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why we chose that, because Australia will be impacted significantly. The the full moon line is going to be running through Western Europe as well as Australia. Plus, this full moon is going to be triggering all the angles in Melbourne's chart. But before we actually go on to Melbourne's chart, we're going to be just describing a little bit the full moon energy, how it might play out in the sign of Aries. So this full moon in Aries is going to be quite prominent. As you can see on the screen, it's going to be happening on 27 degree of Libra to 27 degree of Aries. Now, actually, this moon is called as the Hunter's Moon. And one of the reasons why it's called as a Hunter's Moon, because this was a period of time when people went hunting in preparation for the cold winter ahead. And during this period, actually, animals are beginning to fatten up, and there is a lot more juice to get out of them, basically. Now, typically, the previous moon is called as the harvest moon, but the harvest moon is the one which is actually always occurs to the date of the autumnal equinox.
In the northern hemisphere, yeah.
Yeah, in the northern hemisphere, yes, which is the 22nd of September. Now, if the closest one was already on the 20th of September, so the following one is always the Hunter's Moon. So one of the things which I think worth having a look at, that the 27 degree of Aries is actually a Sagittarius decan and an Aquarius dwad. So if someone is not aware of that, each of the sign is broken into 3 10-degree segments. And the first 10 degrees is always the purest form of the sign. So meaning that the first 10 degree of Aries is always going to be an Aries decan. The next 10 degree is going to be followed by the next fire sign, because we look at it from an elemental perspective. So that's going to be Leo from 10 to 20 degree, and the last decan from 20 to 30 is going to be a Sagittarius decan. If someone is unaware of how to look at the dwads, then each 10 degree is broken into 4 little segments. The first 2.5 degrees is always the purest form of the decan. So in this case, it's Sagittarius. The next 2.5 degrees is Capricorn. The next 2.5 degree is actually Aquarius. So that's how we get a little bit of a message of what this full moon might be talking about. Now, Aries is all about action. Sagittarius is about travel opportunities, for instance, and Aquarius is something to do with the freedom. Yeah. So one of the first things which I would mention with this full moon, which is, by the way, happening when the sun and the moon are in opposition to each other, and it's usually a culmination point, a promise of the previous new moon, that it's going to be highlighting some of the travel and the freedom opportunities in the world. So what I can imagine straight away is that maybe there is going to be further travel restrictions going on. Maybe there is going to be ways of controlling who can go, you know, to foreign countries and who can't. Now, I think it's very possible, because recently, for instance, in Europe, they scrapped things like amber countries. So there is red country at the moment and green country.
Oh, okay.
So either you can travel or you can't really travel without any quarantine and so forth.
Right.
But this full moon is basically on the relationship axis, which is going to be talking about romance, fertilizations, and overall how we connect with others. So Aries typically represents the self and Libra represents the others. And the full moon is like a seesaw energy. So we do need to balance our 2 types of energies. So how I am going to meet my own needs and how I am going to be mixing that with others, for instance, with a significant other. Aries is all about independency. Libra is all about codependency and companionability. So some type of balance needs to be happening there. Now, one of the first things which I spotted on this chart is the very tight Mars and Sun conjunction. So if you allow me, I would speak about that for a couple of minutes, because I think it's very important here. Now, Mars and the Sun conjunction is going to be happening once every 2 years.
Yeah.
And basically, it's like planting the seed. So in mundane astrology, a conjunction is always a start of something. And then there are 4 stages of that, or we can actually look at 11 stages too. But if I just work with the major aspects, then one of the stages, the first quarter moon phase, when the Sun and the Mars will be actually squaring each other. The next stage would be when the Mars and the Saturn, when Mars and Sun would be opposing each other. And by the way, that usually happens when Mars is retrograde. And then we've got the last stage when we're going to have a third quarter phase. It's going to be again a square, but it's a little bit different than the first one. So, and then of course we've got the conjunction. Now this Mars, in modern astrology, we tend to say that it's combusted. Now, I don't think it's true. Combustion would be that the sun rays are blocking out the light of the other planets. The reason why I don't believe it's combusted is because Mars is a hot and dry planet.
Yeah.
Sun is also hot and dry. So Mars is very good at taking the heat. So therefore, it's not going to get burned like the classical texts saying about combustion. However, what I believe happens to Mars, that it becomes blinded.
Right, yes.
Imagine a soldier who is looking up to the, like trying to look up to the sky, looking into the sun. Obviously, the soldier won't be seeing anything. And this constellation for me always indicates that we might be fighting without any consideration. So Mars has got this double-edged sword syndrome. It has got the primary needs and it always wants to fight, but always it becomes a strategic as well, because eventually Mars within age realizes that without any strategy, I have no chance to win. So this time around, that Mars has no clue how to build a strategy. And of course, Mars is in the sign of Libra, which is talking about compromises, strategies, alignment with others. So we might be making an alignment with people without any consideration. We just put our faith into another person. And that's why we've got a full moon in Aries happening, because we need to balance that out. We need to look at our individuality as well, what my primary focuses are, what my personal needs are.
So the fact that the sun is separating from Mars, how would you interpret that in this instance?
Separating aspect usually indicates something which happened in the past.
Right. Yeah.
So in a natal chart, how it works, in my opinion, is that typically a separating aspect tends to be affecting the first 25, 30 years of your life.
Yes.
And then after, kind of like it just becomes integrated. So this Mars and Sun separation indicates to me that maybe an alliance which happened in the past, maybe actually 4 months ago, because there is a 4-degree difference, or 4 weeks ago, or 4 days ago, or actually when the actual transit happened, which was again about 4 days ago. So there might have been an alliance made, and there is going to be some issues around that.
Interesting. Okay. So
that's how I see that separation, but it's still lingering around very strongly.
Yeah.
Now, so I think this Mars and Sun could bring unsettling issues, some type of debates. Both of the planets actually are in a very weak position. Yes. So Sun is called in a fall position in the sign of Libra. Mars is called as in detriment position in the sign of Libra. Now, when I look at, for instance, the essential dignities, I would like to point out that this is exactly what I was talking about, like fake trines, fake conjunctions, and so forth. But this time around, the Sun actually hates Mars significantly, because Mars puts Mars into Sun puts Mars into detriment. So this is actually a problematic conjunction. This conjunction happening, for instance, in the sign of Aries, no issue with that. Because Mars will love the Sun by exaltation, Sun will love Mars by rulership. So that's a very productive conjunction. This time around, this is a very problematic one. So I can't really mention so many positive things about that Mars and Sun conjunction, unfortunately, rather than debates, unsettling issues, violence. And the moon is very fiery as well, and the moon represents people.
Yes.
So Libra is all about decision making. Moon in Aries is very hot-headed. So we might be making some type of decisions, hot-headed decisions. And especially because Pluto is involved here also. Now, Pluto is actually squaring these 2 points. And Pluto, whatever it touches, actually, it intensifies the feelings. Hugely. So we've got the warrior heart here with the full moon in Aries. It's very strong-willed. And then Pluto wants to kind of just intensify that strongly. So anger bursts in some type of relationships, alignments, power struggles in certain type of contractual companionship. It's very possible with this energy.
Yeah.
Now, I'd like also to point out that this full moon is ruled by Mars.
Yes.
Now, we know that Mars is in a very agitated place. And we also know that Mars is bang on squaring Pluto. And now I looked up a little bit in history. Whenever Pluto and Mars in countries are squaring, unfortunately, it leads to demonstrations, power struggles, even wars. Now, I don't necessarily, I don't suggest that it's going to be a war. That's not really what I want to be mentioning here. Yeah. But what I'd like to point out is that inner anger is very intensified within people at the moment. And Mars is our primary needs. It's our survival instincts. And Pluto is actually switching that on. You know, Pluto is a good boy. So first, it destroys things. So in the sign of Capricorn, typically it wants to destroy governmental structures. But then eventually it empowers you to build something new. It tells you how to gain power. Yeah. But when there are so many frustrating energies at the moment, it definitely talks about destroying first. I think this full moon is very much about respecting adversity. With the Marsian element, Mars is all about pushing for whatever we want to achieve. And Pluto is actually telling you to let go of something, because Pluto tends to be seeing things in black and white first. Yeah. So this Mars and Pluto square is definitely about confrontation, struggles. There might be a political person who wants to gain control over others or over a situation, for instance. In personal charts, this could really talk about wanting to climb the hierarchy ladder without considering anyone who surrounds me, because I just want to be gaining some positions in the world. I want to be a leader. I want to have plenty of money. And so this is not an aspect which is about playing safe. This is about domineering. This is about somehow conquering the world type of energy. Right. So overall, I would say about the Pluto and Mars that it gives us a very strong urge to meet our goals. And sometimes we do that with aggression. The danger of that because the moon is involved in this story, that people can become a victim of this power struggle.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So they are somehow in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Now, as I mentioned, this Aries full moon is actually falling onto Aquarius dwad. So the minor ruler of this full moon is actually Saturn, which is another malefic planet. And Saturn is stationary on this day. So it's like the rules, Saturn stopped for a second. So there are no rules in a sense. And then if we look at the essential dignity table again, what we see there is that the moon actually hates Saturn by 4 positions. So again, it is an indication here that people will feel very agitated. Another interesting thing on this chart is, which actually unfortunately not visible, but that's okay, just take it. Venus is out of bound very shortly.
Right.
Now Venus...
Here we are. Here's the declination. So that's Venus being out of bounds at 25.47.
Exactly. That's actually the highest possible Venus declination.
Now, this is from where I live in Australia too, by the way, so it might be a little different in other places. But yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, so if someone is not aware of what an out-of-bound planet means, imagine this planet conjuncting Uranus. So it becomes very rebellious. I give you a personal example, for instance. Imagine that, actually it's one of my clients. Imagine that you've got, even better. Imagine Björk's chart. Everyone heard of Björk. She's got Venus in Capricorn. So how would we imagine her dressing up, because Venus is your dressing
very
style.
Conservatively with Venus in Capricorn, I would imagine.
Exactly. Very conservatively, maybe black, maybe gray colors. But actually her Venus is out of bound, plus Mercury and Mars as well. She's got 3 out of bound planets. So,
I'm so glad her Venus is out of bounds. She's fascinating to watch her fashion sense.
Yeah, look at her fashion style. Well, she is nothing like conservative whatsoever. She matches yellow with pink and blue and green and all those type of colors. And that's exactly what an out-of-bound planet does. So it emphasizes somehow the freedom. So, and what also interesting is that Venus is actually in a masculine sign. So it's very charged up. Venus is again very frustrated at the moment. And also Mercury, sorry, forget about Mercury. I thought Mercury was out of bound as well, but no. So, but Venus is again representing here something to do with foreign countries, because it's in the sign of Sagittarius, right? And it is the ruler of that Sun and Mars conjunction. So the negotiation with foreign countries somehow, I think, can go rocky in the next 6 months.
Interesting. Can I ask, Victor, I noticed that Mars will be in a very tight conjunction with the fixed star Speaker at this time. Does that play into things? Will Speaker be holding space in any way? Because that's quite a lovely influence usually.
Yes. Yes.
That just complicates everything, doesn't it?
But I think what Speaker does is it gives talent to planets. So it kind of magnifies their talents. Yes. What's Mars' talent? Boldness and courage.
Yeah, yeah.
So Mars is very heated. It stimulates actions. Sometimes it flies off the handle when it's very agitated. So I think it's just an indication that the talent of Mars maybe here is that it's able to learn patience, which is very, very needed this time around. Now, if someone doesn't know about Speaker, then actually is one of the loveliest star, which is sitting in the hand of Virgo, and she is somehow representing the harvest overall. So it's basically, if you bring together the talent and the harvest, and then it really talks about, you know, what type of year we made when it comes to the crops. Right. So, but it talks about one's knowledge, the potential for brilliance overall. And I think what it gives to Mars is that it makes it very individualistic, very active. It could bring some type of social success overall, actually. Or in the sign of Libra, it would talk about good judgments. Now, that's the only good part, I would say, is very good here. But looking at the overall planetary energies, when the moon is also conjunct in an asteroid called Aries, which is sitting on 24 degrees. Now, Aries is the 9th largest body known to orbit around the sun. She is 27% bigger than Pluto. She was discovered in 2005, and at first she was called as Xena from the Warrior Princess TV character.
That's what my name means in Greek. I wish they'd stuck with that name. Sorry.
Oh, really?
Yes. Just
is your Aries prominent in your chart?
What have I got there? I think I might have Chiron there, to be honest. So.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. Sorry,
so
carry on.
You are here to actually awaken feminine energies and heal them, right? Aries and Chiron together.
Yeah.
But Aries typically talk about identity chaos. Now, it really fits the picture when it comes to the Aries and Libra axis. Because I feel like what happens now is that we have so many influences telling us who we are supposed to be, who we are not supposed to be. You know, we are told that this is the way how we should look like. This is the way how we shouldn't be acting, and all those type of things. So I think this Aries is bringing plenty of morality questions around the individuality part. So, and then Moon and Aries together is very agitated. It's like acting like a short fuse. So the Moon has got trouble to relax here. So I think it's the anger which is building up, and then it can explode. And what Aries does is that it kind of whispers into your ear, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, you should fight, you should stand up against injustice, you should fight for your own emotions, you should fight for your home, you should protect women and children. And all those type of topics are very Aries-like. She doesn't tolerate double standards. She hates treachery because she wasn't actually invited to a wedding. And that's why she caused a little bit of a discord there. Yeah. So she is the planet of discord and frustration and kind of like warlike zones, really.
Can I ask your opinion on that? I've heard some astrologers believe, they're predicting that Eris will be the ruler, the modern ruler of Libra, because she is in mythology the sister of Aries or Mars, the god of war, and they sit up, you know, Aries and Libra sit opposite in the chart. What's your take on that? Have you heard that kind of theory?
Yes, I did. Do I agree with that? No. No, because I think we don't need to start giving rulerships to minor asteroids on one hand. Secondly, when I really look at Aries quality, which wants to create chaos all the time, Libra actually wants peace.
But she's about justice too, which Aries...
She is about justice, but she doesn't take others into account.
Yes, true that.
She protects children and she protects women, but at the end of the day, when there is injustice, she wants to do that in a cruel way. Yeah. Libra doesn't necessarily want to do that, even though Libra is one of the 4 violent signs, but still it strives for peace and harmony and balance. And the problem with Libra is that it tends to be sitting on the fence way too long. Yeah. So trying to postpone decisions, trying to please everyone at the same time, right? And that's not Aries. Aries sees a problem and then goes and then whispers into your ear, go and then kick someone's butt. Yeah. So I don't think it fits the picture, you know. Yeah. For instance, some modern, especially modern karmic astrologers believe that Australia was Virgo because she is the Virgo constellation. You know, I don't think we need to go that far. Let's just keep it with Mercury. Let's just keep it with Venus. You know, if you looked at the chart, there is actually a symmetry between the rulership. So Venus, yes, exactly. So I think that's not a coincidence. There is a reason.
Thank you for that, Victor. I agree with you there. Absolutely. Sorry, now I've interrupted enough. I'll let you keep going.
With this full moon, I think we're talking about here discrimination, we're talking about abuse, the abuse of power of the governments, the loss of integrity in politics. These are, I think, very heightened. And what it seems to me is that people are very hypersensitive this time around. And they are going to be hypersensitive around their security, around their home and independence overall. Now, I think what we should be doing is, because it does talk about an opposition, which is a seesaw energy, meaning that we need to balance something out. So one of the things on a personal level, which it calls you to act on, is to examine your relationship with yourself, with others, and with your loved ones overall. I think it tells you that it's time to check on your inner child and be really honest about who you are, who you want to become, what you want to be achieving, and whose help I can rely on. Because Libra is a negotiating sign. It's about connections with others. So it's very much about, and I tend to believe that Mars actually rules depression as well in our chart.
Right. Yes, I've heard that.
This full moon might be actually reminding you that if you are depressed, then go to a therapist, Libra, or speak to someone. And that this is one of the ways how you can actually manifest the Sun and Mars conjunction, that I am going to be looking out for a hierarchy figure, Sun, to give me some advice, Libra, about something. Because with the Pluto square, we can easily become the victim of some type of slander, or we can become a victim of just our emotional agitations. Usually that brings some type of distortion, anger built up, and then basically the last straw syndrome is happening, and then it just bursts. Yes, maybe with this aspect on a personal level, we need to be watching out for stalkers, weirdos, or suspicious people around us. That's very possible also. Now, another thing which I looked at, and I found it very fascinating, is that Chiron is sitting on 9 degrees at the moment. And then you might be wondering, oh, this guy is crazy. There is no conjunction there. And that's true. But the last full moon last year in the sign of Aries happened on 9 degrees.
Wow. Okay.
So Chiron is actually triggering the last full moon's point this time around. Now, it is going to be talking about that there is some type of healing to be done around insecurities. We might become a little bit body conscious. We might become, or we might start receiving some type of energy messages. Or I want to be thinking about how we can take care of our own body on a daily level. Who am I? What are my needs? What feels right for me? So the image of the identity is very highlighted. And this time around, the focal point is to heal some of your wounds you gained from last year's full moon, which took place in October. Last year, the full moon was conjuncting Mars. This time around, and Mars was on 24 degrees Aries. This time around, look at that Mars. It's opposing the very same point.
Yeah, wow.
So definitely the last year, October, somehow there is a repetition or a solution of that coming up to us.
Now, I remember in Australia last year, and we said in the beginning that this full moon's going to have an impact on Australia. We were emerging out of our first set of lockdowns at that time, and October was sort of the first bit of freedom that we got, which is interesting. I'm just trying to think what else was happening in October last year off the top of my head. I don't know about France, and I don't know about, what's the other country that this is affecting particularly?
Basically the whole Western Europe. So Italy, Germany, France, and Finland mostly, plus Australia very strongly.
Okay.
Also, if you look at this chart, there is loads of cardinal signs going on, and the cardinal energies are all about initiating every single season. It's a go-getter energy. So this is also telling us that there is this desire to do something with this energy. So I think it's a boiling point overall, and frankly, I think the new moon in Libra and the full moon in Libra is just the start of a very chaotic period of time, unfortunately.
How long do you envision this might last for, the chaos or the upheaval?
My prediction, if you are asking about COVID situation when it's ending, then I saw 2022 between September and 2023 May time, when I think it's fully going to be ending.
Yep. Yep.
You know, I'd like to point out that also, because Pluto is involved, and I might make people paranoid, but what exactly this full moon can do, that it makes someone paranoid. Yeah. Or make someone obsessed with something. And I'd like to point out this is not my intention. Okay, so if you manage to balance out the self and other people's needs, you know, there is nothing to be afraid of. But it's still, whatever goes going on in a country will be affecting us, and we can't unfortunately influence that.
Yeah.
So other things which I've seen on this full moon chart, that there are some asteroids also involved here, and one of them is Pandora, which is number 55 actually. Now, why I found that interesting is I went back a little bit, and I started being intrigued by it, and I went back to the COVID charts, and what I saw there, that Pandora was squaring Pluto that time around. Now, Pandora is an asteroid, but also she is a moon to Saturn. So Pandora is about the Pandora box. So something which kind of the lid gets taken off situation, it's going to be some type of secrets revealed here. So Pandora's themes around curiosity, and then the cat is killing kind of that situation. It's something to do with unintended consequences, or we get caught off our guard. And it's quite rebellious energy as well. She's a little bit of a troublemaker.
Very much.
So overall, I think that Pluto is going to bring in some secrets. That this full moon is going to be highlighting some very serious secrets around things. And other one, which I saw that this time around, Pluto actually conjunct in Hebe. And Hebe is another asteroid which indicates service-oriented work, such as clerks and waiters and administrative assistants. In relationships, Hebe shows up in readings where one person is tend to become the slave to someone else, to the partner. So what I think is going to be happening, that they might connect the COVID situation with work situations. Meaning, if you don't have vaccination, you can't work.
Oh, yeah. That's what's happening in Australia at the moment. So we're already in that situation. And interestingly, Libra is court cases. Today, there was a very significant court case being undertaken, as we're recording this, being undertaken in Australia to determine whether compulsory vaccination or mandated vaccination is actually against our constitution or our, federal laws. And it appears that it is, but we'll see how right and just our legal system is here in Australia. The verdict hasn't been handed down as yet, but we're all waiting with bated breath for that one. So.
No, I didn't know about the fact that it happens in Australia as well, but I know it happened in Italy and Germany. Yeah. Now, I find it interesting that actually this full moon and new moon in Libra and Aries are falling onto Berlin, Oslo, Rome, Melbourne. I find it very interesting that it started in Italy. Now it goes on to Australia as well. And I'm sure the next one is going to be Berlin.
No coincidences. Hey, it's all astrological. Yeah.
Yes. Unfortunately, and I think if it happens, I fully understand why the identity wants to merge in Aries.
Right.
And I understand why the moon and the Aries are having a conjunction, because Aries talks about movements. People will be very angry and people will start talking.
Yep, and you've probably seen on the news, there's so many protests in Australia. We're already very angry, and the police are firing on protesters with rubber bullets who are just out there peacefully protesting for their rights, you know, things like that. It's hideous. So you know, if this is amping up, let's deep breaths I think are required to get through this period, but maybe it's necessary to, as you said, to bring up corruption and hidden secrets and to purge those things, which doesn't necessarily happen very easily when we're talking about really deep, dark depths, getting into the basement of what's truly been going on and revealing it and shining a light on it. So it's powerful times for change. And I think we have to tap into that brave Mars warrior spirit as best we can to push through that. Certainly that's the feeling in Australia at the moment. And
just making sure that we take into consideration other people's needs as well, because that's how Mars is going to be functioning really well in the sign of Libra, right? And as I mentioned, it's kind of combusted. So that's important that we, you know, we are not blinded. We are just not rushing to the shops and then start buying things up and so forth, because others will need petrol as well. Look at what's going on now in England. There is a limitation of how much petrol you can buy, and that's £30 in one go, because they want to make sure that it's distributed to everyone who wants to be driving. And, you know, of course, primary needs, Aries, but at the same time, you know, we don't want everyone to die off around us.
Yes.
You know, and look at what happened last year when, you know, the toilet roll situation and the food situation, people fighting in shops.
It was
so
absurd,
this
wasn't
is
it?
exactly what's highlighted here. We shouldn't be doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you mentioned before we started recording something about Ceres and food issues. Did you want to touch on that and where you're seeing?
Yes, basically, it's not going to be in this chart, but I went on to the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction charts, and that's where Ceres is going to be on 29 degree. Oh, right. Now, Ceres is something to do with agriculture, food supply. And I'm hoping what it's going to be indicating for us is that we're going to be finding a solution for that.
Great.
So that's one thing which I found very interesting there. Now, Ceres also is about anger management. I'd like to point that out because her daughter got abducted by Pluto, and she went mad, and she just went and tried to, you know, save her daughter. And then eventually they came to a conclusion, okay, Persephone is going to be spending 6 months underground, and she's going to be spending 6 months with her mom. So some type of unsettling issues, but also Ceres might be bringing up there, but I think it's going to be some type of food issues, which need to be looked at significantly. Ceres will be, by the way, in the sign of Libra. It's going to be in Taurus in that moment. So it's about nature, it's about food, it's about your storage, your pantry in your house. So food issues are very significantly coming up. And it's not a shock, to be frank, because again, if you look at what's going on in England, shops are closing because there is no food supply. So if you want to go into a McDonald's, for instance, I know that from first hand, you can't buy orange juice, you can't buy shake because there is no food supply. Wow. This time around, the problem is that there are no lorry drivers, so they can't deliver the food. to big shops. So such big chains like Nando's, 50 shops closed down and stuff like that.
Right.
And
so
then
this
more,
is, sorry, Victor, I was just going to say, is this an agricultural issue? Like, it sounds to me like there's food there, but it's just the chains of supply are the issue, which would, to me, speak of Saturn in Aquarius being blocking chains of supply, Saturn to block and restrict. What do you see that as?
I think it's a little bit of both, to be frank. But typically, probably you are right. I think it's going to be more about the people don't want to work because, in a sense, they feel kind of like being a slave, not getting enough money and stuff like that. I think that's one part of it. And also, I do believe that there is the agricultural type of part of it too, meaning that the crops were not as good.
Yeah. We're looking like having something like that happen in Australia this year too. I might actually share the screen again and have a look at the chart of Melbourne and what's happening. Let me just get it up here. Right now, we were chatting about this before we pressed record, and we were looking at what's unfolding, like with the violence in Melbourne right now. And one thing that jumped out at me was our progressed ascendant, which is seen in green here, is currently in a conjunction with Pluto, so that violent element in Aries. So, you know, we've got, like I just described before, the police and rubber bullets and all that sort of thing going on. We've also got people lining up for miles and miles or kilometers and kilometers in Australia and Europe, but wanting food because, like you've just described, the food issues, mostly in Australia, it's because people have lost their jobs because they're refusing to have the vaccine, and there's mandates to have the vaccine. And so if they don't have them, how are they going to feed their family? And people are struggling now. And all these forced lockdowns that we've had as well, that people have not been able to earn money to pay their bills and what have you, and they can't feed their family. So food is an issue in Australia as well, not so much related to supply or agriculture, but related to power, Pluto, and control issues from the government that have caused this. So is it any wonder people are, in this case, very, very upset when we see this is the chart of Melbourne here where this is occurring. And you mentioned some other things that you saw unfolding here too.
Yes, I'm just bringing up the chart here for me because I had the full moon chart and now I can't find it. Yes, what I also saw here is that your progress midheaven, which is on 16 degree, is actually conjuncting Ceres. And of course, that is squaring Pluto there.
Yes, so this is
now Ceres, as we mentioned, it's about food supply and agricultural type of matters. So I kind of find it interesting, you know, is it because you guys don't have enough food or the agricultural situation is actually bad? Or is it because actually they can't really control it, as you said yourself, with the Plutonian energy?
Yeah.
And I kind of see, I think it's both, because Chiron, transit Chiron is already kind of conjuncting the rising sign, the progress rising sign. Mm-hmm. So it's triggering the light between Pluto and Chiron. So I think it might be an indication there that the agriculture wasn't that great this year. Mm. Yeah. I don't know much about your agricultural situation, but Chiron is definitely playing a big role here because the transit North Node is sitting also on Chiron as well in your 9th house. Mm-hmm. Right? So I'm just wondering, are we making some type of agreements because we are with other countries because we are struggling with food supply? Mm. Or we are trying to save something with Chiron, because Chiron is actually in financial astrology the planet of correction. So are we trying to save some type of money somewhere?
Yeah, I think that's been what's happened, because we had a deal with France to purchase, it's been going on for like 20 years or something, to purchase some nuclear submarines, and it hasn't come to pass. And so we've scrapped that deal and signed a new one with England and America for more nuclear submarines. So there are some, pretty heavy duty negotiations with other countries going down that would fit that bill for sure.
Mhm. Now, also one more thing which I actually see here, and probably the money is involved because your progressed Venus is actually in conjunction to an asteroid called Pholus. Now, Venus rules the 8th house here in whole sign house system.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to do with other people's money. And Pholus is actually a very interesting asteroid. It's about basically the story is that he invited Hercules to a dinner, and he was the protector of a divine wine. And Hercules wanted to drink from it because he was thirsty, and also he was curious as well. And Pholus at first refused to give him this wine, but then eventually he gave in, and that's caused a kind of like a war between the Centaurs because he should have protected it. So that's a little bit of a story behind it. So Pholus represents in our, and then taking the story a little bit further, actually Pholus, so Chiron died in this battle or got wounded in this battle because by accident he shot his foot with a poisoned arrow. Yeah. And then Pholus actually tried to remove this poisoned arrow. And because he was so fascinated by a tiny arrow making such a huge disaster, and then he dropped it on his foot, and then actually he died. So Pholus is very similar to Chiron, just the difference is that Chiron is immortal, Pholus was actually mortal. So what it does really talk about in our chart is also something to do with sacrifices, self-sacrifices, sacrificing our visions, but overall it does talk about how we can hurt ourselves overall. Now, so I think what the country wanted to do there is to save a little bit of the money.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why there is some type of collaborations. And of course, Venus is coming from the 8th house as well. So it's definitely about 8th house topics overall.
Yeah. For sure. And we've got the Uranus transiting through the 8th house and on the natal Venus too, which can be sudden turns around and sudden changes. That can be.
Yeah, and that's going to be exact next year, sometimes in March, April time, that conjunction. So probably whatever the full moon actually indicating this time around in your 1st and 7th house axis, there is going to be kind of a sudden change or a peak sometimes next year in March, April. Wow, that's going to be kind of the start of your winter season or getting close to it, right?
Yes.
So some bits and bobs might be coming to highlight that.
So what was that? Sorry, I missed that.
Some bits and bobs around financial matters of the government and maybe food issues might be coming to a spotlight next year once Uranus is actually hitting Venus.
Yes. So how can we be forearmed as we head into this? Would it be wise for us to sort of, plant our vegetable patches this spring or get some chickens or something like that happening in readiness for what might unfold?
Having the North Node moving into Taurus, I think one of the manifestations of that is having your own food supply, right? So as you say, Taurus can represent things like the garden. So we can do some type of gardening. We can grow our tomatoes. We can have our chickens running in the backyard and so forth. I think actually that's a very good idea. Yeah. And also that Ceres conjunct in the midheaven there by progression in the 4th house, which represents the land anyway. So it could really talk about investing 8th house Venus into some some gardens, some lands, some growing, some agricultural type of things around homes. I think that could be very powerful, actually.
Yes, it's going to be, I think, a real change of dynamic when the North Node especially goes into Taurus. and we get the South Node in Scorpio too. That's a whole other topic. Maybe we could do another video all on the change of the nodes, Victor.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I think we couldn't mention so many positive things in this video about this full moon, but it looks a little bit intense, surely. Do you see any positives at all? Or?
Do I see any positives? I think that, I mean, there's shadow and light in everything, as people will have often heard me say. And I think really we're being asked to draw on our courage now. And I don't know, I see Mars, even though it is more debilitated in the sign of Libra, I do see Mars as fighting for a just cause in Libra. And sometimes, you know, like the old biblical saying, to everything there is a season, a time for peace and a time for, hopefully not war, but a time to stand up for righteousness. So I'm really moving in that energy, I feel, you know, for better or worse. I think that we need to be courageous and we need to be warriors and heroes in our own life, in our own little way. And that's perhaps what a full moon in Aries might really be calling us to now. How would you interpret it, Victor?
You know, as I mentioned, I don't necessarily believe that planets are against us. I do believe that they are here to kind of show us something. Every single constellation has got something positive to mention. So having Mars in Libra is actually why I like Mars in Libra, is because it's not that hot-headed. What it does is it goes and it kind of like a peacemaker, right? So it promotes the peace. So, and I'm really hoping that's going to be one of the case here, right? Or Mars in Libra only gets angry when there is some type of when I feel that someone is not just with me, right? Mars in Libra is able to see other people's truth.
Yes.
Mars is not necessarily self-righteous in the sign of Libra, right? So it is able to focus, or it should learn to focus on the social aspects of life. Libra is kind of like a traditional sign as well. So Mars in Libra, when it comes to sexuality, it's more traditional rather than that animal instinct that's let's go and then have sex all the time. So Libra is looking for the right circumstances and the right partner, right? So there is Libra Mars, especially in men's chart, it's kind of like the lady killer charm, right? While Cancer in Mars in Cancer is the macho charm, really. So, you know, there are so many good things about it. Mars in Libra is very ready to settle arguments because it has got that diplomatic cooperation going on. So that's exactly the problem I'm having with, you know, all these combustions and detriments and so forth. But because Sun hates Mars at the moment, you know, it's hard to settle those arguments. It's hard for Mars to become diplomatic because I kind of feel that someone is sitting on my neck. Someone is kind of pressurizing me in a sense.
Yes, that's exactly what it certainly feels like. The energy here in Australia at the moment feels very much like that description. Perfect analogy. Not a perfect feeling, but it's very accurate description.
So let's hope that speaker is really going to give Mars the diplomatic talent.
Yes.
There, and then it's not going to take it too far. And let's hope that Pluto square is not playing such a huge role. Aries opposition to Mars. But to be frank, I'm expecting some turmoil.
Yep. Forewarned, forearmed, we will be ready when it happens and yeah, hopefully know how to handle it. Well, Victor.
And you know, I think Mars in Libra is also talking about let's just be united.
Yeah. Absolutely. How can we negotiate this? Yeah.
Because I think the problem at the moment that everyone is pulling into different directions, and that's exactly what this opposition to Aries, Pluto square talks about. We hear something and then we go in a different direction. Let's say I've got a job, or I have got a better offer without any consideration. Yeah, let me just go ahead because they give me a couple of pennies more there, right? And then eventually I regret it. right? So I think it wants us to see things clearly as well within us. Libra is the mirror. So look into the mirror, examine yourself where you lost your identity, and then how I can bring that back without being forceful.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you for that insight. That gives me a lot of hope, actually, when you say that. I want to say thank you so much for joining us for this fascinating insight into the upcoming energies. If you would like to get a reading with Victor, then the link to his website will be in the description box below. And once again, thank you, Victor. We'll have to have you back again soon, and maybe we could have a chat about the nodes or the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. Maybe, guys, if you want to leave a comment in the comment section about what you might like us to talk about next time, then we might be able to address that in the coming months. But once again, thank you, Victor, and thank you everybody out there for joining us. We look forward to chatting again next time.
Thank you, everyone. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.